testament to the advocates, their connections, that they could find people who were trusting enough and willing enough to speak to two lawyers sitting in Minneapolis, Minnesota, when they were either still in Ukraine or had made it out. They were very willing and open. And that's a real testament to the connection that the advocates has with that community. So I just want to take a few minutes and explain to you what the program is and what our objectives and final product is actually, and what we're really, the whole focus of the project is, again, as Rose indicated, is to document people's stories. And there are a lot of organizations around the world documenting people's stories. There are organizations that are on the ground in Ukraine that are documenting people's stories. And so one might ask, what does one organization based out of the Midwest really going to do? And I say a lot, actually. So what we did was there would be one attorney, either Jim O'Neill or myself, just the two of us, and we would be with an interpreter. We have one of our interpreters here in Italia, and the interpreters are absolutely critical to making this project work, not only because they're telling us, sharing what the witnesses are saying, but they're the real human connection, because I'm speaking English, and they're actually having a conversation with this person who's really in a moment of distress. When we started doing these interviews, it was just weeks after the invasion, and so a lot of these folks were extremely traumatized, and to have a friendly voice and a friendly face speaking the language that you speak was really important. We also had a note taker who was an employee or an intern of the advocates, and a few of them are here tonight as well. And they had a really important job as well, because they were actually documenting the interview. Those of us who were taking the interview were very involved in the conversation, and so they were making sure that we were getting everything down so that we could document it and report it. Ultimately, our goal was to report all of these stories to the International Criminal Court, so they can take this evidence and use it as they see fit. And the more evidence that they have, the more that they can do with it at the end of the day. So it really was, it's a great team who comes together, who meets by Zoom, or I learned WhatsApp. I learned about Viber, which I found out has been out there for a long time and I didn't know. And we just talked for about an hour and let them share whatever they wanted to share. We would focus on the fact that we were really there to document humanitarian crimes against humanity, but we let them go wherever they wanted to go. And quite honestly, it wasn't hard to find evidence of crimes against humanity. Every story that was told was evidence of a crime against humanity. So we took the time, we let them direct the interview anywhere they wanted to direct it, being cognizant that some of these were very open sores emotionally for some of these people, but they were willing to tell their stories. I remember one story in particular of a couple that had escaped Mariupol and were in Western Ukraine when we spoke with them, and the story they told of trying to get out of Mariupol was absolutely horrific. And theirs was not the only story like that. They spent a number of weeks in a theater that had become a shelter, sheltering with thousands of other individuals, families, children, babies, where they didn't have food, water, diapers, and that wasn't even the worst of it. So they were very brave to tell their stories, and we did our best to document them. Ultimately, we issued or prepared a report that was submitted to the International Criminal Court in July, where we documented up to date all of the stories that we'd taken in. There was also a UN special reporter on disabilities that was asking for submissions of evidence of injury and crimes against people with disabilities in the face of war. So something we don't think about is, we're talking about these people who have at least the physical ability to try to escape. Some folks don't even have the ability to evacuate. And we spoke with one woman in Kyiv who couldn't leave. She was wheelchair bound, she was very ill, she had breast cancer. And so we documented, we managed to be, that wasn't really the goal of the effort, but we came across people who were individuals with illnesses and disabilities along the way. And so we also submitted a report to the Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and I actually had the great honor to offer the oral statement of the advocates in front of that committee and provide our input, and it was at one of their 2 annual meetings that they have every year in Switzerland. I didn't get to go to Switzerland, Zoom sufficed, but it was still special nonetheless. So in so much of this, we were hearing so much horror that made you sometimes, when you got off of these calls, it was hard on all of us. I think it was particularly hard on the interpreters because they're not only having to hear it once, then they're having to say it again in English to us. But there were some really positive lights that came out of it, and I just want to share 2 of those. Jim had the opportunity to interview a father who was trying to escape with his wife and young daughter, and after rolling through a checkpoint, they just opened fire on them, and the mother was killed. The daughter was shot, and she lost her arm. And after talking with them, one of the advocates' employees, Elizabeth Lacey, connected them with an organization in New York that provides prosthetics to people who are victims of war and otherwise. And so that was something really positive, and that tells you you can make a difference even when you feel like you're, just one little thing in a great sea. Every bit of it counts, and you can make a difference in one family's life. There was another woman that I had the opportunity to talk to who was also trying to get out of a city in eastern Ukraine, and she was traveling with her daughter, her granddaughter, and her son-in-law. The daughter was a judge and was known to be a judge, and they stopped them at a checkpoint and took the mother and the husband, leaving the grandmother and the granddaughter. They didn't know where they had gone, and when we interviewed the grandmother, she wanted to tell her story, but more importantly, she was looking for help on how to get her daughter and her son-in-law out of prison because they'd been imprisoned by the Russians, and she didn't know where they were. And I felt very helpless that I didn't know what to do, and I kept telling her that's not the reason for the interview. I can't help you, but I will tell your story. And I called the advocates and asked them, what could we do? Who do we know, what can we do? And Rose and Jim actually made contacts, and they submitted a complaint to the UN Special Procedures on behalf of this woman and her daughter and her son-in-law, and we learned just this week that she was released. Yes. Every little bit counts, and every personal impact you can have makes a difference, and that's what the advocates are doing. So thanks.